All right, we got why do fighting game characters get banned?
Game balance.
So, what is happening?
Damn.
It's hard. The more characters there are, the more variables you have to take into consideration, the easier it is to overpower a character.
Oh my god,
This is also true in shooting games. So if you're playing like some random shooter and you take the average time to kill of every single gun type, and then all of a sudden there are a couple guns that become outliers, then all of a sudden those really good guns that can kill people really fast, those become the meta guns. So usually when a dev releases a game, they usually they do some form of like QA and like alpha beta testing, but you're really gonna leave it like essentially up to the players to figure out what the meta is, what's overpowered, why is it overpowered, and so on and so forth.
I'm mad as hell and I'm not gonna take it anymore.
Fortunately, almost all games made today are tuned with competition in mind.
Right.
But that wasn't always the case. Sometimes there were characters that were simply too strong,
There he goes.
Too strong.
Oh, he's doing it. He's saying pick someone else.
too weird,
Easy peasy lemon squeeze.
or too broken to ever be played in
Dang.
a tournament.
I swear to God! What's up with the DPs and neutral that ain't getting out?
I didn't win the previous round.
Yo, Marvel! Holy shit!
Oh yeah.
So today, we're
This is the aim of at least the old school what do you call it? This is just a fighting game community, but this was probably pretty true of like tournaments with like shooting games back in the day, because a lot of them were team based, and then you're playing with like chunky TVs. You got like 5 TVs like just facing each other, and then all of a sudden you kill somebody, and then you can just stand up and start like talking shit to them right there. Yeah, so this is not like fighting game community is not like exclusive in this respect, like starting fights. Granted, shooting games, you're not sitting right next to your opponent, like within arm's reach. All right, a lot of these tournaments, I mean, I think like nowadays, most of the time, everyone's pretty chill. I mean, yeah, there's like a little emotion, but like as far as like swinging on someone, a lot of the times I see people. Well, I don't know. It really depends. I was gonna say I don't see like the chairs right next to each other, but I guess that just depends on the tournament. I think a little bit like something safer. Well, safe is relative, but at least have the people like on an angle away from each other, out of arm's reach from each other at minimum.
We're going to explore banned characters in fighting games. So what are some reasons that a character might get banned? The first is something we probably
They
won't see
OP.
again. Console exclusive characters.
Oh,
Imagine pulling up to your local to play some Mortal Kombat 9. You've been grinding it out on Xbox Live, practicing punishes, working on your mix-ups, and playing every night.
all
You
right.
get to your first round of pools, and what do you see in the character select screen? Someone you've literally never seen before.
Ooh.
Kratos, who is only available on the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita versions of the game.
Oh.
Obviously, Xbox players facing off against a character they can't practice against is unfair. And if a tournament
That's so stupid that they would make that. Like this like when was this game made? He said what did he say? PS3 and Vita? That had to have been years ago then. Like for them to do this on day one, like release the PlayStation with the Kratos and the PS Vita with Kratos. Like how could you just do this? Why not? Like I know there's like some licensing bullshit where you can only have Kratos on PlayStation, and if he ever shows up on Xbox, it's like it'll just never happen. But it's just kind of funny to me if they were thinking about competition in mind. Why would you only put a character on one console system and not the other? Just put him on both consoles. That seems so stupid. So why would you ever invest any time and energy into Kratos then?
was hosted on Xbox, it would be unfair the other way. The solution was to straight up ban Kratos.
Yeah.
Thankfully, console exclusive characters are more or less a thing of the past.
Oh, it's a
Something devs
PS3.
used
Yeah.
to do to hype up the release of their game and attract a few more customers. Nowhere is this more apparent than the Soulcalibur series.
Oh
So let's
yeah.
start with
Soulcalibur actually goated. I remember when Soulcalibur 2, I think they did this in. What'd they have? They had the GameCube version had Link. The Xbox version had Spawn. And the PlayStation version had Hihachi Mishima. Oh my god. Those were and what I have. I think I got it on the Xbox. So I got Spawn, but I didn't really like Spawn. Like I think I looked up a tier list and they put Spawn at like the bottom or some shit. So I was like, fuck that. I'm just gonna play with Keelik.
the big one, Soulcalibur 2. For OG fighting game players, they may remember the game having an exclusive character for each series of
This was the
consoles.
This
For
was the time.
Nintendo GameCube, Link.
Yeah.
PlayStation, Heihachi from Tekken.
Heihachi
And
was good.
Xbox players received Spawn.
Spawn wasn't
as
that
a
good.
part of the newly formed partnership with Todd McFarlane, the creator of the character and graphic novel. Obviously, all 3 characters were banned. But there was one more issue with Soulcalibur 2's roster.
Oh.
Necrid, a new character designed by McFarlane, who was unavailable on the arcade version of SC2, which was released nearly a year before the home console version.
Huh.
With tournaments back in 2002 still being played on these archaic machines, Necrid was banned for the sake of competitive integrity.
Fair.
6 years later, Soulcalibur 4 released, adding 3 more characters to the ban list. Of the 3, 2 were for the exact same reason, Yoda and Darth Vader, who
Oh,
are
I remember this one too. This one was Soulcalibur was awesome with Yoda and Vader. Oh, it was so good.
released for the Xbox and PlayStation respectively.
Yoda
were
was
not
too good,
totally
man.
legal. But the third character, well, we'll get to them later.
Who was it?
Nowadays,
I forgot.
console exclusive content is liable to get your company canceled. So we don't have to worry about this problem anymore. So what
Like, I don't actually think that any FPS has had this issue of having like different guns or different characters in their games. So I don't think that's ever been an issue. The thing with FPSs is that, or like coming up with a banned character just in general is like, it's gonna be up to the community to deem a character like overpowered and so on and so forth. And then, you know, with the help of like social media and whatever, talking to the tournament organizers and maybe if it's like a developer tournament or some shit, figure out what is like is that like a fair ban or something like that? Because as far as I know, like in shooting games, people will come up with these things called GAs or gentleman's agreement, where it's not like an official rule that you can or cannot use a gun or an attachment or so on and so forth. It will be just up to the players to have some competitive integrity to not use a gun or a grenade or an attachment or so on and so forth. Yeah, I try to think about it in terms of like Super Smash, because in Super Smash, what do tournaments go off of? They go like a couple levels, either symmetrical or asymmetrical to some degree, and all items are off. And you can literally and that's an option that you can do in the game. I don't know why a lot of these games come out and they don't have that option. If they want to have a tournament mode, have like a little screen where it asks you, oh, for fighting games, here's the character list. Do you want to have a couple like bans or whatever? I think that would add a little spice to the fighting game community games. If they had a screen where they could just ban characters, because I know they kind of do that with Super Smash right now with like stage banning and whatnot. But imagine if like some FPSs, like either Apex or Overwatch or any shooting game really, they just, what do you want to ban a couple heroes this one? Just ban some heroes, or in Apex ban some guns. Dang, that'd be really cool to watch. I would maybe play Apex again.
Other reasons might characters be banned. The next group can be categorized as hidden characters or boss characters. These characters are typically unlocked either by straightforward means, such as beating the game's arcade mode, or by inputting a button sequence to unlock them. These types of characters were supposed to replicate difficult bosses from the game's story mode, and were certainly not made with competitive play in mind. The most famous example is Akuma from Super Street Fighter II Turbo. To put it simply, this character was f***ed up. In order to pick Akuma in the game, you had to hover over Ryu or Ken for 3 seconds, then T-Hawk, Guile, Cammy, and finally back to Ryu or Ken, followed by pressing start and all 3 punch buttons simultaneously.
That's so
if done
weird.
correctly, players would earn access to Akuma, by far the best character in the game. Akuma is basically
fair.
Ryu and Ken on steroids. He had way more damage, a flaming fireball that went through other fireballs and could guarantee knockdowns with the heavy version, an insanely fast teleport, an air fireball that straight up invalidates anti-fireball options like Zangief's Lariat, the ability to combo off of basically anything, and much more.
God dang. That is a character and a half. And again, I think this situation for Akuma would just come down to, you know, the community. It would be like left up to the community on whether or not they want that character allowed or banned. And in that case, they probably just like banned Akuma because it was like, it's annoying to pick him. You know, if you allow him in the tournament, you have to wait. What is that, like a minute or so to, you know, just to pick the character, and then you have to do a button check, and you go back out, and then you have to pick him again, which takes forever. So it just prolongs the length of time just to get a match done. There's also that to take into account. So I think it was probably fair to, you know, ban him or whatever.
Although Akuma would appear as a hidden character in future Street Fighter games, his Super Street Fighter II Turbo iteration was by far the strongest, rightfully earning him a ban for the entire competitive lifecycle of the game.
Get banned,
For
bitch.
another example of an OP boss character, let's head over to the realm of anime fighters.
Ooh,
Guilty Gear Accent Core Plus. The character? Justice.
just
Justice is a boss character that was made playable on the console version of the game. Much like Akuma, she was fucked up. Insanely fast, great combo game, all the tools to rush you down or zone you out. This character simply broke the competitive meta and was unsurprisingly banned. Luckily for Justice enjoyers, with the release of Accent Core Plus R, Justice was tuned.
Bro, what?
Luckily for Justice enjoyers, with the release of Accent Core
Bro, I thought Capcom fighters had like ridiculous names and like expansions to their game. Guilty Gear XX Accent Core Plus R. Like, what the heck kind of name is this for a game? Is this like the 20th version of the game? Like Guilty Gear 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 Accent Core. Like, were there games just Guilty Gear XX Accent Core, Guilty Gear XX Accent Core Plus, and then the final version, Guilty Gear XXX plus Accent Core Plus R? Were there a couple other versions of this game before this one came out? Because if so, that's like actually ridiculous that like this community of players would put up with that bullshit. Because what was it? Street Fighter 4? There was Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 4 like Super Street Fighter 4, Super Street Fighter 4 Turbo, and then Arcade. It was like, what was it? Arcade Mix, and then Arcade Ultimate or some bullshit. There are essentially just a bunch of different versions of Street Fighter 4 that it was getting ridiculous to buy the new game every time, when what you could have done is just, you know, add a patch to just regular Street Fighter. But no, you know, Capcom. Everybody wants to forget when Capcom released that game, they had a bunch of different versions of that game.
Plus R, Justice was tuned and balanced. Aside from nerfs to her frame data and damage, her mobility was gutted, and she had her ground dash, triple jump, and triple air dash taken away, making her a much
triple
slower
jump and triple air dash? Holy shit.
character. While Justice was still powerful and hit like a truck, she was balanced enough to be allowed back into competitive play. Okay, so we've talked about console exclusives. Now, let's talk about the main reason that characters get banned. They're just too damn strong.
Too strong.
Remember how I mentioned that Soulcalibur 4 had 3 banned characters? Well, the final one was Hilda. On
Hildy.
paper, Hilda looks pretty balanced. Sure, she's got a long range, but she's also slow and unwieldy in close quarters. However, she has what is known as a Doom combo, which guarantees a ring out off of 1 confirm, something no
Oh.
other character really has.
Hildy is such a strong character, you always have to give it to the player playing her.
Oh.
It's not a Hildy match. And there's the ring out.
Oh, damn. That sucks. Bro, I don't know why they would keep ring outs in this game. I do think you had like a little bit of directional input or influence in this game if you were getting juggled. So you kind of had a little bit of control, if I recall correctly. I could be wrong. So for them to play on like a little tiny stage like this, but you have control of your character a little bit in the air, I guess that would make it okay. But overall, this, like, whenever you get like wrung out, that feels like dog shit, dude. Like, just again, just go back to the tournament mode for the game and ban stages that have ring outs. All right, it's simple.
Like that. Just like that.
That is
And
bullshit.
you hear the boos.
Oh, and the crowd don't even like it either. That's so dumb.
With ringouts being a guaranteed round win in Soulcalibur, Hilda was quickly banned from most tournaments. In JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Heritage for the Future, there are 2 universally banned characters, Kakyoin and Pet Shop.
Oh
Pet
yeah.
Shop is an inherently strong character. He has insane damage output, excellent movement options, and an unblockable setup with his icicles. But none of these are really ban-worthy. No, the main issue with Pet Shop is the fact that he's a bird who flies. He's a flying bird. He prefers the air. He literally doesn't touch the ground, meaning that he is immune to low attacks, invalidating many characters on the roster. So far,
Bro, that's actually crazy because a lot of the times in fighting games, if there's a small character, they're usually small on the ground. So at least you can hit them like mid and low. But since they're so small, they don't get hit by like highs. So you have to, so at least they can get like, they can kind of still get like 50-50 on a high low, but they're still susceptible to like left right 50-50s. But when you have like a bird, like just a flying character that just neutralizes the low option, you can only get the bird on left right cross ups. You literally negate the up down option. Oh my god. And that's why you don't have flying characters.
all the characters we've mentioned have one thing in common. Aside from the fact that they're insanely broken, they're all from older games that aren't going to get patched anytime soon. With modern fighting games receiving frequent balance patches, character bans these days are rare, but they do still in fact happen. Here are a few examples from the last 3 years alone.
Oh,
Dragon Ball FighterZ is a game with a long list of overpowered characters.
damn.
However,
I didn't even realize Dragon Ball FighterZ had a banned character list. Because for the longest time, like, I actually enjoyed just watching it. Even though I didn't play this game, I loved watching it. Like, whenever Cell was like the point character and he just like blasts out his yell and the crowd goes nuts just because it's like a 0 to 60 type vibe, it's awesome. But I had no idea that there were banned characters in this game.
only one has ever been officially banned. Labcoat Android 21.
Really?
Labcoat 21 is in a tier of her own due to remove Photon Pulse, a grab that buffs Labcoat's damage by 21% while nerfing the enemies by 21% permanently
Damn.
for the rest of the match. Although the move itself is hard to land, it was actually possible to combo into the super, which was just busted.
Damn.
At Combo Breaker 2022, she was the most used character by a wide margin in top 48, with 33 teams running the character. In comparison, the next most used character was Vegito, with 14 players using him. By
Dang.
the time top 8 rolled around, only a single player remained that didn't have Labcoat in their team comp. Following Combo Break,
And honestly, it just as an outsider, the only reason it feels like she got banned was just because the move permanently took 21% of your damage away, do you think she would have been like still usable if it wasn't permanent? Like only like maybe she did the move and it only lasted a couple seconds, like a second or two, or I don't know, whatever's fair. Or anything else. Just take the permanent thing away. Dang. Do you think people still would have wanted to play her then? Huh. That's crazy.
Breaker, CEO announced that the character would be banned from their tournament taking place the following month. Thankfully, this ban was short-lived after a balance patch went live and Labcoat 21 received several nerfs, including taking away her ability to combo into Photon Pulse.
Oh shit.
While they're still a common pick, they're nowhere near as meta-defining as that Combo Breaker. Next, we're going to talk about Tekken 7. You knew this was coming. Tekken 7 has had its fair share of overpowered characters like Akuma and Geese, but the Season 3 DLC roster brought in some real bullshit. Leroy Smith and Facom Ram. Let's start with Leroy.
What the fuck was his name? Facom Ram? What?
Like the other characters we've mentioned already, Leroy had it all. Strong base tools, ease of use, and insanely high damage output with little to no risk. To demonstrate how broken Leroy was, let's travel back in time to EVO Japan 2020. Leroy had only been in the game for a month, but the general consensus was that he was the best character in the game. At this tournament, the top 3 players from the previous EVO Japan all lost and were eliminated by Leroy players before the top 8. Top 8 itself featured 6 Leroys, and when all was said and done, the eventual champion, Book, told players the secret to winning. Just pick Leroy. After the tournament, many top players voiced their displeasure about the character, with one of the game's greatest players, Ni, revealing that out of the 960 participants at EVO Japan, around 80% of them were using Leroy.
Oh, God, that's so boring. This is why devs, at least of fighting games, really need to be like tuned in to the tournaments of their game, because you can't have your tournaments of your game having an 80% turnout rate of just one character. That's so boring to watch, dude. Holy. So here, I think in a fighting game, it's kind of bad to have like one outlier character like Leroy or the other dude to have an 80% turnout rate. But when it comes to shooting games, you're obviously going to have like some standout like guns or whatever. I mean, look at CS and Valorant. They essentially have like a sniper, like some sniper on one character, and then 5 or like 4 AKs on the other characters. So there's not really, it's essentially the same thing in terms of like the meta. The difference is that like in the shooting game, there's a bunch of other variables to take into account besides everybody just has the same gun. Yeah, or like in an Apex, what's the meta right now? I think it's like 30-30, like R9 for the most part, and as long as you can get your hands on some sort of like long range gun and some short range SMG, you're pretty chilling. So yeah,
calling for the character to be banned. Instead, Bandai Namco released an emergency patch specifically targeting Leroy. As a result, Leroy escaped the ban hammer. Unfortunately, Facom Ram was not so lucky.
Bro, who named this dude Facom Ram? That is such a horrible name. Or a goated name, depending on who you ask.
And he ended up getting banned from almost every tournament in one of the game's strongest regions, Pakistan. On top of his insane damage and great movement, especially for a character his size, Facom Ram had to be banned due to his janky hurt boxes, which allowed him to escape guarantee.
And who says like men aren't like sexualized in video games? This guy is literally this guy could literally beat C-Bum in like the Mr. Olympia. Like easily. This guy is made out of fucking chiseled marble. Okay, dude.
Guaranteed combos and
this guy has negative body fat percent, all right? Like Jesus.
Start his own counterattacks. It's hard to blame the community for banning him, especially since Falcon was released right after Liwon. Having two game-breaking characters back-to-back.
Yeah, look at this dude. He makes everybody else, even the other jacked guys, look like they're fat. Like every other character looks like they're like 10% body fat. This guy is at like -12.
Is enough to completely ruin the fun of a game, and Falcon was the last straw for the Pakistan Tekken community. This leads us to the last reason a character might get banned in a fighting game, which is, sometimes it just feels like the right thing to do. There's no objective metrics for what gets a character banned, and
Yeah.
often it's up to the community to decide what version of the game they want to play.
Yeah, because oh geez, and you have like Pikachu versus Meta Knight right now. When I think about what was it? What was that game? Like Ultimate MVC 3. A lot of those characters could like be considered overpowered, but in order to do a lot of the crazy things in that game, it took like just a high level of skill and a lot of times like one frame links. And if you don't know what a one frame link is, it's like you only have one frame to like link a move perfectly. Like you end a move, there's like a tiny window to do something, and then you have to execute it in one frame, which is in general very hard to do, let alone in a tournament where you got your nerves going as well. So I think in general it would be, as long as it takes a considerable level of skill to execute a move, that character is fine. But if you're like over here choosing Meta Knight, where all you do is just spam neutral B and do a little tornado, and your hitbox is inside and it's really tiny, and your hurt box is like massive and you can't really do anything, you just spam neutral B everywhere. It's like, okay, that takes zero skill. Anybody can do that.
In games like Smash, there were calls for Meta Knight to be banned in Brawl,
Oh, yeah.
Bayonetta in Smash 4, and currently Steve in Smash Ultimate. And different communities from different regions have taken their own approaches. Some tournaments banned Meta Knight, while others today are banning Steve or unbanning him depending on the event.
Oh, dang.
Sometimes a middle ground can be reached, like for the case of Ice Climbers in Smash Melee, whose
Oh, yeah.
infinite technique known as wobbling has been banned, unbanned, and rebanned throughout the years.
That's so funny because I saw that video where it was like, I forgot who did it, but it was like a case for and against wobbling, because wobbling is like a high skill thing, but the people that are showing up to these tournaments are, it's about the same crowd of people showing up. And so with that, the people can easily execute this like wobbling thing. And because it's so common among the top players, it is perceived to be like a common, easy thing. But meanwhile, if I were to try to wobble, I would just not be able to do it at all because I just don't even play this game anymore. So, yeah, from that perspective, then I get it why you'd have to. What was it? You could choose. What was it? You could choose Ice Climbers, but you couldn't wobble. Was one thing, or you could only get like a couple reps on it. Then you had to let him go or some shit. I don't know. Like the rules for this were like really wonky.
Regardless, with games being frequently patched and new characters releasing all the time, it's unlikely that we'll see too many characters in the future being banned from tournament play. However,
Right.
as we've seen with Dragon Ball FighterZ and Tekken, it's not impossible to get the balancing wrong, and sometimes a character ban is the kick in the pants a developer needs to rethink how they balance their game. What are your thoughts on banned characters in fighting games? Are there any characters throughout history you think should have been banned but weren't? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. My name
I think, what was it, in regular MVC 3, like the original one, not Ultimate, I think Sentinel was a hot topic because he had so much health and he had so much damage. I think eventually he did get nerfed, like his health and damage got nerfed, but he was still just a good character because he had a bunch of great like normals. And he had a super normal, or not a super normal, super armor on his, like, what was it, down medium or whatever, when he, like, crouched and, like, kicked his legs out and all that shit. It's, like, an easy move to do, and you just get armor. But that would have been, like, one thing. I mean, I never went to any tournaments. I just played against my friends, and picking Sentinel against your bros is just super. It's hilarious. But I mean, when I try to think about FPS, there's not a lot of instances where I can remember where things were banned. I do remember a couple, like, what was it, the Black Ops games? Was it Black Ops 2? They did have their like rank mode, and whenever you clicked on ranked mode, whenever you go to make your loadout, there would be like certain attachments and guns and like little tacticals or whatever that you couldn't use. And it's just like, okay, you're playing this mode, and in order to create a stable, balanced, consistent environment, you can't use these things. So this happened when I was like really little, and I was like, oh, what the heck, I want to be able to use this thing or whatever. But it wasn't until like I like talked to somebody or whatever where they told me that's the reason why they have this, like, all this banned shit in the ranked mode. But you know, all of the banning stuff, that's just it's just a thing to create a more consistent environment, because with a more consistent environment, the higher skill player should, you know, defeat all the like other players or whatever, you know, as opposed to someone that's just using and leaning on a gimp or something like that, like a gimmick tactic or strategy or character or whatever. But
My name's Jonah. See you next time.
nice. This is another good ass
This
video.
is made possible thanks to our wonderful patrons. Massive
This was awesome, dude. Yeah, I mean, I do think you're right with like modern fighting games. I think devs are a little smarter in how they design their characters. I think their characters go through a little more scrutiny nowadays as opposed to back in the day. But I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll still like come out and see some like super crazy characters for like DLC and whatnot. But yeah, that's pretty much it. All right, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.